Daniel Lucas, and welcome to Book 101 Review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. He's a British comedian, musician, writer who lives in the Netherlands, none other than Mr. Stephen Morgan.
Thank you, Daniel. Good to be here. Thank you for the introduction.
Welcome, Mr. Steve. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I miss?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm originally from the UK, from Wales, and I currently live in the Netherlands in a city called Utrecht, which is kind of in the middle. I like this country. I like living here. It's a great place. I've been here since 2018. And yeah, I do various things, like so many people in life who have just kind of pinballed between different interests and found what some things stick and some things don't. I do a lot of things like improv comedy, stand up comedy, both performing and teaching. I also do like corporate trainings. I do work as a writer. I do some music as well. I used to do a lot more, but nowadays it's more just doing soundtrack things for other people who I'm working with. But yeah, I kind of I'm always looking for something exciting and different and new as a next challenge, basically.
Something good for sure, Mr. Steve. And today let's talk about you being a comedian, in short, comedy. So tell us, what does the mental dialogue sound like for a comedian right before they step into the spotlight for the tight 5 minutes set versus walking into a completely blank state improve scenes. And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world, Mr. Steve.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, I mean, of course, it's a thing which gets easier over time because, of course, when
Mhm.
you start out, the level of anxiety and stress for doing something like this can be quite high. Depending on your personality, of course, whether you're sort of more introverted or extroverted. But I know that right at the beginning, for me, it was always something that was very intensive, more so than anything I'd experienced before, even more than being in bands and being on stages, where I kind of figured that that was more of a transferable thing, that I would be more comfortable. But I think there's something about the fact that it's you, it's just like you and the things that you alone have created and written that are supposedly going to entertain a group of people can sort of put a twist on things, which is, I don't know, a lot more anxiety inducing, I find. But of course, over time, that improves. I mean, like with anything that you're getting better with or getting more experience with, you do find that it's just more relaxing. You become more comfortable in what you're doing. You have more material built up so that you know that if things start to go not as you would like them to go, that you can fall back on some things which you know can be better to pick a crowd back up. But I would say that it's not something that ever goes away. You don't ever reach a point where you're like, well, the anxiety's gone now, and everything is completely fine. In fact, there's only one performance I think I've done where that actually happened, and it went terribly. There was a part of me beforehand where I was feeling, actually, this is great. I feel so sort of zen right now. Maybe this is, finally starting to click and to be something which I can do with a lot less sort of mental energy to build up to. But the problem was, of course, is then you're not as connected and switched on. It's a very sort of fast thinking thing. You have to be really like present in real time in everything that you're doing. And yeah, in that case, my mind was just elsewhere and it did not go well.
Well, I salute all the comedian because it's hard to be a comedian, people, because I myself I'm trying to be a comedian because I have a podcast called Comedy 101 and my partner trying to teach me how to be a comedian.
Really
So
nice.
yes, we salute. all the comedians out there. Walk us through the process of taking a raw, personal, and maybe even painful life experience and, well, transmuting into a piece of stand up material that gets laugh.
Yeah, it's a good question because it's something which once you get started, you start to have to sort of view the world a little differently. Because I think that when someone gets started in stand up, that there is a misconception that I mean, I definitely felt it, and I know so many others have as well, where you might be someone who is really sort of charismatic and funny in front of a particular group of friends. You know, you've got a group of friends who they know you well enough that even when you make these little off the cuff comments, they will crack up. They'll think it's really funny, and it makes you think, you know, this is I'm a funny guy. I can do this. This is no problem. But of course, the big difference between that sort of way of yeah making people laugh and literally going up in front of a room full of strangers and trying to do the same thing is that they don't know you. I mean, of course, you know, there's a certain level of fame where that sort of thing kind of happens again for certain comedians, and it can almost be a problem for them because they don't really get the proper feedback loop. But it's something that's very different because you not only have to make these people laugh, but you've really got to set them straight as to who you are, what you're about very quickly. And part of that whole kind of process of preparing material and, like you say, sort of taking something from maybe a difficult or traumatic experience really comes from essentially being able to constantly think during the day of different things which might possibly becomes sort of material. I think that really it's more about the fact that when inspiration hits, you don't know when that's going to happen. And it's far easier to be ready for when it happens as opposed to that whole like writer's block inducing dilemma where you sit down and just try to write, which can be very difficult. So I think that when you are looking at the sort of experiences or just I don't know, tangents or whatever it is that you want to turn into something, into a bit, that one of the things that can be sort of useful, and you know it takes a bit of getting used to, is also to be able to let things go, because there are plenty of experiences like you described which I've had, which I genuinely have tried in so many different ways to make into something that would be funny or interesting to others, and I just cannot make it work. You know, like the
Mhm.
specifics of what happened are just too, I don't know, they just don't sort of resonate with the crowd, and it's too complicated, or the way that this whole thing happened, you can't build any suspense, and that in itself then can become quite a problem. So instead, you just have to be really kind of like willing to let something go. You know, be able to let say an idea, you tried it, it didn't work, move on to the next one, because sometimes the best material you come up with can be from the most mundane, you know, really sort of not particularly inspirational on a personal level way, but the net result can be something that's far bigger and funnier than you could ever have imagined. So you just got to keep looking for that point, you know, keep looking for that sweet spot where you find something and you get the inspiration. And until then, you just got to keep going.
Yes, keep going, people. Try until you succeed. Beyond just setup and punchline, how do you think about the architecture of a joke? Elements like tension, timing, callbacks, and the rule of three. Can you deconstruct one of your own eight bits for us?
So those are, yeah, those are some of the sort of structures which you can use to build up a particular joke. So, and I think that there are some which are useful for when you're starting out and you're just trying to get inspiration, because of course different performers have different styles, different ways they look at the world. And personally, I'm much more of a an absurdist kind of comedian, so I find that it's difficult to deconstruct in that same way that you're talking about of something that I'm doing in terms of the setup punch or the three-part list or anything like that. But what I find really useful about those, even though that's not my style, is that with all of creativity, I think that it's really good to limit yourself, which sounds really counterintuitive. But once you start putting limitations in place, it sort of focuses your mind. And it lets you then kind of like go from having this overwhelming list of infinite possibilities of what you could write, work on, or anything, and then just start to think within these boundaries. And something about the fact that you're trying to find something unique, or that you've just put yourself in a situation that's not the norm, can really sort of help spark that creative burst that can really get through that. So I find that the parts that you're talking about right now are particularly useful if you have that sort of first draft of something that you're working on, and now you want to go back through and edit and edit and edit, because like with everything in stand up, you want to try and make it as punchy, as short, as impactful as possible. And actually, there is a book by a comedian called Adam Bloom, who has been a ghostwriter and a stand-up comedian for like his whole adult life. And if there's any book that I would recommend in terms of stand-up comedy, it would be his. And the main reason is because those things you're talking about, amongst so many more, intonation, timing, and things like this, he deconstructs in a way that I've never seen anyone deconstruct before, in a way that is so low level, that is so almost robotic. It's almost scary because you're taking something that's a creative endeavor, and now you're kind of applying and really observing these kind of structures to it. And whilst I his comedy is so different to mine, I do think that no matter what your style is, it's always good to have something which you can come back to and just sort of refer to as something that you can edit with and improve your own material with.
Definitely. The principle of yes and is famous. But what does it feel like internally when you truly embody it on stage? How do you train your brain to accept any reality and build upon without moment of hesitation?
Yeah, that one is one which you often see beginner comedians really struggle with. And that is actually one thing which I found sort of more, there were many things that I found more difficult than average, but that was one thing which was easier to me because of also my improv background. It's just the way that my mind sort of works. But it is so important to be present in the room, because it's one of the, there's such a big difference between, say, watching a stand up special on Netflix and actually performing in front of a room full of people. And one of the things that, of course, is most different is the fact that those are actual people who are present in an actual place right now. That experience which will happen there, adaptations of material specific for where you are, who you're performing to, or adapting to whatever things happen or go wrong in the moment, those all really sort of make that night special in a way that you'll never be able to get from a recorded performance. So really, I think it's about just kind of like going up and having this sort of open mind and finding this sort of connected state. It's a very difficult thing to do, and it takes a lot of practice, that you're somewhere in a balance of kind of having that like nervous energy, that anxiety that can keep you switched on, but not so much that it then causes like some sort of negative spiral feedback loops in your head that then you start doubting everything you say. For me, a lot of it is just not having the filter and just going for it with say what you feel, say what you see, because sometimes the things that you will say, you can then almost react to how ridiculous what you've just said is, because you've just come up with it in the moment. So yeah, for me, it's all about like being open-minded and like having that really real golden state, and also just being aware. Never just let something pass. Someone smashes their glass, yes, you can get on with your material and pretend it never happened, but it feels weird. You got to address the things that happen in the room, right? You got to find a way to incorporate it, basically.
Yes. So s- how do you as a performer distinguish between a good silence than, well, a bad silence? What is your go-to move in each scenario?
That is a yeah, that's a good one, and I think that that one comes from how comfortable you are with the material that you have. So if you've got something new, say you're taking it to an open mic, then you might be a little bit less certain about what it is that you're sharing and what that silence means. But this is fine, because that is what like the open mic experience is for. It's about learning how the material kind of goes down with different audience types. The idea is if you're going to do material that's like a little bit more, say, going to basically confound the audience's expectations or build a tension where maybe you take a point of view that is clearly going to have them feeling uncertain about what it is you're talking about, then
Yes.
you need to be able to know that the material itself has been like tried and tested and has worked. And like with anything like this, because I think any performance arts, you need to get up on stage. There is no substitute for stage time. You do not learn even a fraction of what you learn on stage when you're just sitting down writing things. So I think that a lot of times with these sorts of things, you've just got to go up and accept the fact that you're going to fail and look out to fail, because when you fail you can start to reflect, see what it is you did wrong and adapt it for next time. That's the way that you should be approaching your writing and performing with stand-up comedy, not just basically trying to fine tune something for months and months only to find when you actually take it to the stage that, well, it just doesn't work.
And Mr. Steven, on the difference in crossovers, stand up is often highly written and rehearsed, while improv is about presence. As a practitioner of both, which discipline feels more terrifying and which feel more liberating?
Yeah, this is very much like a different for different people, and it's a personal thing. But for me, improv is kind of like my comfort zone. Um, I have a sort of a habit of getting bored of things easily. So I do find that with stand up, I have to change my material regularly because I myself struggle to deliver something with the same like passion or animation when I've been doing it for like tens, hundreds of times compared to when you've done it for the first few times. Or, of course, the first few times you're still polishing it, but there's like this sweet spot when you've gotten it good, you still like it, you still enjoy it, but you don't feel like you're just kind of, acting out something which you've done a million times before. But with improv, to me, there's always that level of excitement where you just don't know what's going to happen. And like the way that my brain works is that I thrive in that environment. I mean, I do a lot of MC work as a stand up as well because I love that kind of interaction with the audience, that sort of spontaneous coming up with something in the moment. It's something which just suits how my brain works. So, yeah, that is whilst and there's a big difference I think as well, because of course with an improv show you can have not been doing it for a while, you can jump in and you might be a little rusty but you'll be fine. But with stand up, yeah, once you're a bit rusty you need some time then to work up to get that sort of rhythm and cadence to be ready to perform again. So it's a lot more of an investment in every way.
Mr. Steve, as a comedian, what are your short term and long term goals?
Well, it's changed a lot recently. I recently became a father, so my goals right now are just to be able to focus on that for a while and then start to pick things up again. For me, I think the thing that I was kind of aiming for and starting to do before as well is to start doing formats and shows that are sort of exclusively something which I've come up with and sort of structured and created myself. So whether that's improv or stand up, there's just something about, I definitely have a love for the theatrical side of things as well. I'm not one of these people who thrives with just like a microphone and saying, how about that? Some sort of observation. Hey, that's not the thing that kind of like gets me going. I like this idea of just like turning the performance aspect on stage, the engagement of what you're doing in every way to engage people in a surprising and perhaps different way. And it's actually something which I think is a lot more prevalent in the Netherlands, especially with the Dutch language scene. Some of the more established performers here kind of embrace that in what they call cabaret here. But I think that America, for example, is a country where there's not as much of that. It's much more in that kind of like traditional, very sort of predictable method of basically having, someone, usually like a middle-aged white guy, go up and deliver their material about like why things are weird.
Hmm. Yes. And good luck to your goals, Mr. Steve, and looking forward for more success. And what would be your piece of advice for those people out there who want to be a comedian like you?
Nice. I think that the biggest advice I can give to someone is to just do it. Just get up there with your half prepared 5 minutes, type five for your open mic that first time, because I didn't get started nearly early enough in what now I love and do so much of because I was terrified. And I always felt like I'm going to do it, but I just need a bit more time to prepare, and that bit more time went from weeks to months to years, and it just continually happened. And now, when I look back, I realize that you just don't learn nearly as much as by being on stage as you do just doing it the first time. If I look at the very first performance that I ever did, I never did any of that material again, even though that whole set I spent so long working on, so long working, trying to work, performing into a mirror, just doing it so that I tried to have it so it was verbatim, word for word ready. And it wasn't, the performance went well as far as the first performance goes. I was kind of happy with it, but there was so many things that I learned, like about how some of this material just didn't feel right for me, or how so many of the things just didn't seem okay, that I needed that experience just to be able to take the next step. And if I'd have continued to write on my own, I would have just wasted more and more weeks, months, years. And so, yeah, I just say, don't keep finding excuses. Just get up there, give it a go.
Yes, go, 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 people, and stop procrastinating. And thank you for that advice, Mr. Steve. And can you please recommend a book or books that influenced your journey?
Yeah. So I'm recommending so for me, I find like there was the Adam Bloom book I mentioned earlier is a particularly good one for stand up. But for improv, I think there's a lot more that you can kind of learn from books on improv. I think there's a lot more you need to kind of work out for yourself with stand up as well and find your own voice. But for improv, there was the first book that I ever got recommended was Jill Bernard's Small Cute Book of Improv, and it is a very short book, and it's amazing how much impact it has had though in the world of improv, because it's all about these very tangible ways of building a character from nothing. So if you think about podcasts like Comedy Bang Bang, or other things where improv based things like Paul F. Tompkins and people like that, what they've done is they've taken that and they've taken it to an extreme where you can just sort of get something from nothing and just create a fully fledged, fleshed out character. And I think that what's so nice about the book is it's just so simple, but it just kind of summarizes these things in these vapapo, which is a term which you would learn if you looked at the book. And yeah, for me, it's something which I have come back to multiple times. I've taught workshops on this particular subject, and I've now, in recent years, have performed alongside Jill Bernard, the author, a few times as well, and told her face to face. I was like, "Hey, your book was one of the ones that got me started." So, yeah, I recommend it.
Thank you for that recommended book, Mr. Steve. And tell us, what is the hidden, unglamorous, or difficult part of being a comedian the most people in the audience would never guess?
I think the most difficult part is that your evenings are now this, and the majority of it is traveling to a place. And especially if it's some sort of open mic or something like that, you might be in the car, the train, or whatever it is, but you are going all of this way to then perform for anything from 5 minutes to an hour. And then as soon as that's over, you're going all the way back. And then you're doing that again and again. Like, so it's so unglamorous to say, I know, but it's the truth, and it's just like such an overwhelming part of it is getting around the place and actually being able to go to places. I understand why someone would want to move to a city like New York, where there's just more of an intense scene, like, closer together. But
Mhm.
yeah, if you're in a country like the Netherlands, that's just kind of part of the parcel. Is you just one night you might be in Amsterdam, Rotterdam, next night you're in Maastricht in the south. You just got to go to where it's happening.
Yes, go to places where people appreciate being a comedian. So is comedy for you driven more by desire for connection and understanding, or is it exorcism of personal demons and anxieties?
It's kind of, I think it's more of the former, it's the connections, because when things go well, it's a buzz that's kind of like unlike any other, really. And it's one which is exhilarating on so many different levels that it's incomparable. And like I said before, like I have a sort of tendency to get bored of things easily. So in this particular sort of arena, there's always ways that you can make things interesting. You can learn something new. You can try something new. You can make it whatever you want it to be. You can be one of those comedians that does the exact same set, year on year. Like it's really tight, really well honed, done, and everything. That's also a totally valid choice. But you can also keep challenging yourself, trying new things, finding out what the possibilities are. So yeah, for me, it's that can also be like through collaborations with other people, through meeting other people who inspire you. So it's definitely the former, I think.
Interesting, Mr. Steven. And before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people, because my Abstract Essay is already in fifth season. Abstract Poetry in second season, and my Book 101 review in fifth season too. Comedy 101 in third season, and my Food 101 in fifth season as well. Geography 101 fourth season, and my baby podcast, Law 101 and Mental Health 101, Love Letters in fourth season, as well as my movie 101 review and music 101 and science 101 and sex 101 in its third season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Mr. Steve, if you could remember for one thing in your comedy career, would you rather it be for a legendary stand-up special that is studied for decades, or founding an improved theater that launched the careers of generations of icons?
Honest, that's a really good question because both of those would be amazing. But I would say if I was younger, it would have been the stand up one. But at this stage, the other one sounds like I could do something that I'm closer to home and things like this. Because honestly, when I mentioned about the traveling, I'm sick of that part. So yeah, let's have
Mhm.
that theater going.
Yes, and Mr. Steve Morgan, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. So can you please invite our listeners to support your being a comedian and any projects that you're doing right now?
Yeah, no, there, like I said, it's now I've recently become a parent. Things are definitely on the on a pause, I would say. So I'm hoping to start things back up in the new year. I've got social media sites where whatever those things are will be posted, and you can share those in the notes, I'm sure. But until then, yeah, I just need to be able to find some time to sleep.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Stephen Morgan, because if you support him for sure, more and more empowering being a comedian, right? So, Mr. Stephen, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for your questions, Daniel. It's been a pleasure.
More to come, people. See you soon.